And every interaction that you have with people, you're either going to complete or compete with that interaction. Complete and compete. Very similar words, but one has the letter L in it. So my brain goes to, well, what's the L factor of connecting with people? You need to find a common link, common like, or common love. Connection. If you can find that common link, that common like, common love, you'll make a connection with them, and then you'll be able to move and into establishing and maintaining a rapport. Rapport is the key asset here. So the part of the question comes in this, that when you're looking to establish and maintain rapport, how do you start? By asking questions. So the 3 word is, I'm just curious. And when you start with the I'm just curious, your subconscious mind stays open. What are you curious about?
Welcome to the People-Powered Solutions podcast. In this show, you'll gain expert advice and tips on building a thriving workplace culture with happy employees. I'm your host, Lauriane Duguay, and I'm thrilled to be spending this time with you today. Hello, and welcome to another episode of People-Powered Solutions podcast. Today, we welcome a guest with a bit of a unique career trajectory. We welcome the retired spy himself, JJ Brun. I'm not sure. How would you prefer to be introduced, JJ?
JJ is fine. It's French, as in my full name is Jean-Jacques Joseph Brun. So quick little story. When I was working overseas, they couldn't pronounce the name Jean, but they could say, "Hey, Jean-Jacques," and they thought they were bilingual. So working in a multicultural environment, one day I was alone in the office and a British colleague came in and he needed something that was on my desk. And he said, "Hi, JJ." And I'm like, well, there's nobody else here. Jean-Jacques, JJ. I connected the dots and I turned and I answered and I got branded. And it's been a working name ever since. And the message is, if you don't brand yourself, somebody else will. So for me, I had a working name when I was overseas as JJ, and it just basically stuck. And it's easier for people to remember how to spell it and how to pronounce it. So
for sure. That's a great story. And someone with a French background, myself being Francophone, my first language, I have a lot of my friends, one of which was Mireille, which is a really difficult name to pronounce in English. So every time we would travel together, people would be like, "Oh, Mirelli." Now I'm thinking maybe she should have rebranded herself too. Well, actually she did when we think about it, because she goes by Mimi. So that's something that's easy to pronounce. But okay, so JJ, how about you give us and our listeners a bit of a Cliff Notes version of your career trajectory. So how does one sign up to be a spy, and how do you end up becoming a spy?
It wasn't my high school goal to become a spy. High school was 5 years was hard. High school was, I'm like going to school. For me, I always have to work a little bit harder. But I was always interested in physical activities. So transiting to university, Laurentian University, I was in the phys ed program. And it was hard. It was just hard just to go through, or I have a more challenge. I have to repetition. I have to write it over and over and over to receive it. One day I came back home. I lived in a small village named Field, which is about an hour and a half from Sudbury. And one day I had this big Laurentian University sweatshirt, embroidered sweatshirt. And my dad asked me, "Well, where did you get that?" I said, "Well, I bought it." Where did you get the money? And I knew where we're going. I knew where the conversation was going. "I worked this summer." "Where did you work this summer?" "At the gas station." "Who owned the gas station?" "You do." "So who bought that?" Check. As in, I was out. As in, I left university.
Checkmate. Yeah.
Well, it's my trait, my persona, my personality is very strong, very outgoing and task-oriented. I liked, I would describe myself as being dominant, direct, demanding, decisive, doer, let's go. And being told what to do, or people having, I just had a fight with that, and then I left university. But here's where it doesn't make sense. I left university and I joined the military. Like, they're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah, of all the different
Yeah.
environments to get into.
It was just a tough time for Dad, because Dad was paying for everything, right? And he didn't have the funds. As an entrepreneur, it was he wanted absolutely for me to go to university, and it was hard. And I just did not understand his financial situation or the burden that he was under. We have a great relationship ever since. It's just that was my journey, where I left university because I had a fight with Dad. On day 3 of boot camp, I called back home because these people are crazy. And I was talking to my mom on the phone, and I'm like, Mom, as in, this is nuts. I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this, and I won't lose my first year of university. I'll get a mentor. I'll study. I won't
catch up. Yeah.
I'll catch up. But my dad's listening on the line, and the best thing ever, my dad listening on the line said, "You've made your bed, son." Click. Okay, so Mr. You know it all. You're 19-year-old. You've made a decision. Live with it, and that's the best thing that he could have done. As hard as it was, because I hurt my dad by leaving at that moment. But then he was so proud when we graduated, all of us. We graduated, and I went into the combat arms. So I went to the Royal 22e Régiment. So that's in Valcartier, Quebec. I did 5 years with the combat arms. I had a very good career, in the sense of it takes you 8 years to be a sergeant in the combat arms. It took me 3 years and 10 months.
Wow, that's
so it went fast, but
fast.
I was very hard on myself physically, and I needed to change lane. So I decided to apply and to become an intelligence operator. So that's how I got interested in the whole intelligence spectrum, or the intelligence community. Is that after 5 years in the combat arms, I just started over, got trained, and then from there just started learning about that medium, if you wish, because I was looking to diversify at the end. As the plan was to do 20 years, and then from there go into a different career path. And what happened is that I did 5 years with the combat arms, but I did 15 within the intelligence branch. Within the intelligence branch, I specialize in the field of human intelligence. So that's where I got branded as the retired spy, because my claim to fame back then was that I was the first one selected for the role of a contact handler. And a contact handler is a person, he or she is sent to a hostile environment. For me, it happened to be the war zone in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where he or she has to cultivate sources, which is building relationships by design, not by chance, determine their intentions, and modify their behaviors without the use of any Jedi mind tricks. So I had to build or I was going to be evaluated by my ability to build relationships with people, so that I can present an idea and turn them so that they can become an informant for what's actually happening on the terrain, so that we can advise our commanding officer, so they can make an informed decision as to where to put all the resources. And at the end, I had over 100 people working on our behalf in that area, and called Mostar. So if you know where Sarajevo is, you just go south about 4 hours plus or minus, and the little place called Mostar is where I operated in back then. So I got into the field of human behavior. I've been 30 years now. I've been studying and training within the field of human behavior, and I have now over 30,000 hours in equipping the people for works of service in regards to that area. So it's kind of funny how the whole thing came about, because I never wanted to be, never looked at, hey, one day I'm going to be that retired spy.
Yeah. Did your orientation teachers present? How about a spy as a career? That's something you could look into.
I got interviewed by Yahoo because they saw the retired spy, and I got interviewed. And for the first time, I told my story. And my mother, he lives in Sturgeon Falls in Ontario. Her friends was like, read the article, and then he goes, "Hey, Raymond, is that Jean?" Right? And then she read the story, and she did not know. She knew I was in Bosnia, but she did not know what I was doing over there.
Yeah,
So,
imagine you weren't allowed to share the details of what you actually
yeah,
did within
so
that
it's
military.
fascinating, because my biggest challenge was how do I go? How do I connect with people? There's people that just have a natural ability of just engaging, interacting, because to build a relationship before, you need to have a conversation. And before you have a conversation, you need to know the question to ask.
Yeah.
So what are the questions to ask? And how do you have a conversation? And I did not know. Like I struggled in that area, and until I found out, well, what are the 10 most effective feel-good ice-breaking questions? And then when I'm like, oh, let's go. I'll memorize that. And
Okay,
by memorizing it,
yeah, I'm stopping you there because you're going with too many. I've got too much I want to talk about here. Number one, a loved relationship by design, not by chance. That you said that earlier. It's when you discovered that relationships, and to your point you're just making now, is that it needs to be intentional to some extent, right? And you need to spend some time. So I do absolutely want to hear more about those 10 questions, but just want to make a point of your 30,000 hours. Have you read Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell?
yes.
Out loud, like that means you do realize that means you're like elite level at this point, right? Because
I'm
anyone who's excellent has 10,000 hours. You've got 3 times that much hours.
I'm still on that journey,
You're-
because I'm now studying or teaching at the Ottawa University. I do a lot of training, corporate government training. I accredit and certify people also for the RCMP or CRA in their leadership program. So I put in about 1,000 hours a year in the field of human behavior, specifically in the application of the 4 temperament model of human behavior. So I'm still on that journey and
You're
keep on learning
continuing
and
to grow
growing.
and evolve. I love it. I love it. Okay. So if we think about our listeners, a lot are business owners, a lot are leaders. Those 10 powerful ice-breaking questions you referred to.
Mhm.
Let's talk a bit more about how they could perhaps use them, when to use them, and what some of those questions might be.
Well, in today's time, we're so distracted. It's like to get someone's attention, their full attention. Is there a way of asking a question that would stop and everybody, really pay attention to you? And I have a 3, 4, 5 approach: 3 words, 4 words, 5 words that I combine with the 10 most effective feel-good ice-breaking questions. When I was working overseas, the first case that I was given, we branded the gentleman as the self-declared mayor of Mostar. He was not the mayor. He just projected himself as the mayor. He was, in fact, the Al Capone. He was running that whole town. And in Mostar, you had the 3 main ethnicities. You had the Serbs, the Croats, and the Muslims. So in this case, he was a Croat, but it was a hardliner. And we needed to make that connection. And every interaction that you have with people, you're either going to complete or compete with that interaction. Complete and compete. Very similar words, but one has the letter L in it. So my brain goes to, well, what's the L factor of connecting with people? You need to find a common link, common like, or common love. Connection. If you can find that common link, that common like, common love, you'll make a connection with them, and then you'll be able to move and into establishing and maintaining a rapport. Rapport is the key asset here. So the part of the question comes in this, that when you're looking to establish and maintain rapport, how do you start? By asking questions. So the 3 word is, I'm just curious. And when you start with the I'm just curious, your subconscious mind stays open. What are you curious about? So with the self-declared mayor of Mostar, I started with Dobro jutro, jestem Jean-Jacques, kako ste? Like I learned the introduction, the dialect. And then with the help of an interpreter, I said, I'm just curious. And he stopped and he looked. How did you ever get interested in politics? Because the first question in the 10 most effective feel-good icebreaking questions is, how did you ever get started in the widget business? So you just have to reframe that question. I'm just curious. Now he's here. How did you ever get interested in politics? Because he sort of like that self-declared mayor. Because if you ask that question at the right time, the right moment, the right session, people will talk for 10 to 15 minutes without stopping. Now, he didn't follow the same program that I followed, because he talked for 45 minutes without stopping. 45 minutes of providing a lot of leads of how to then navigate in the conversation. I don't remember all of the
That's
statements.
cool. Yeah,
I just remember the first statement that he said. Well, I am an educated man. You cannot not communicate. So as a practitioner of NLP, that's a mantra from NLP, as in you cannot not communicate. We communicate all the time. That was important for him. But in that culture, education puts him at a certain level.
Yeah,
and
it's
then, if you're not there, then you're on the bottom of the totem pole. So it's like, okay, well, that's a little bit different. So he wanted to be,
you wanted you to know where he falls on and where he stands on that totem.
Guess what? I made myself smaller, made him a little bit bigger. I became his audience. And then at the end, he said, you're different. You will speak to your general on our behalf. Because his group wanted to separate from the Federation. And he assumed the fact that my name is Jean-Jacques Joseph Brun, French, that I wanted to separate from Canada.
Yeah.
I have no intention of, I'm born and raised in Northern Ontario. I have no intention of separating from Canada. I did not feel obligated
to share
sharing that with him, because he provided the link. Come and link, come and like, come and love. They wanted to separate, you want to separate, you'll talk to your general on our behalf. And I became their source, or their ears for what was happening on the terrain, on the ground. So, but it all starts with the part of the question, as in, I'm just curious. Well, you know how? Well, you know how, 4 words, to make a connection. Well, you know how it's hard to, well, you know how it's whatever it is that you want to bring so that their head goes up and down.
Yeah, something that's common.
Okay. Would it be okay, as in 5 words, would it be okay if I follow up? Would it be okay if we go and visit? Would it be okay if? And then from there, it provides an opportunity to ask more questions and to really discern their preferred communication style, because that's the part of the question. How do you discern one's preferred communication style? That's the 2 P's of decoding human capital.
I love.
You can like. I love the people-powered solutions, and I'm like, oh, we are DHC Training Solutions. Not a lot of people know what the DHC stands for: decoding human capital. Looking at people as having a human capital waiting to discover. So how would you go about decoding one's preferred communication style? That's the 2 P's. There's always a pace perspective when you're interacting with people. Are they fast paced or they're slower pace? If you can discern their rate, their space, but they talk loudly, they talk slowly. Big gestures, small gestures.
Yeah.
As in fast or slow. That discerns where they tend to lean or their preferred communication style. And then there's the priority perspective towards task, as in there's the language of very task-focused, task-oriented, or is their language more people-oriented, people with feelings? So the difference between the two, there's always a pace perspective when interacting with people across cultures, and there's always a priority perspective. And if you can discern those two, you'll have a start point to communicating based on how they're wired, their preferred communication style. And it's very easy to adapt to them. And it's a teachable model, as in.
It is an absolute teachable model, and it's so powerful. A lot of I like your questions, first of all, that 3, 4, 5 question, 5 word, 3, 4, 5 word questions in terms of connecting with your team members, perhaps as a leader within the organization, to better understand them. So many leaders struggle with having that coaching conversation and really kind of digging a bit deeper, or even having the harder heavier conversations with some of their team members because they don't know where to start. I love that 3, 4, 5 word methodology is a way to start connecting and then follow their lead, right? They're going to be providing you with additional cues, with additional information. And I like that you shared those nonverbal insights of their pace. Is it a fast pace? Is it a lower pace, slower pace? Is it a loud voice? Is it a lower voice? Is it, when it comes to priorities in general, do they tend to prioritize tasks and getting the work done? Or are they that team member who is more social and likes to find out how your evening was the night before? And to take the time, I'm hearing from what you're saying is to be impactful in your conversations and in your communications, you need to take the time to map out and to understand what their style is. And then you need, as a leader, it's your responsibility to meet them where they're at and start from that point.
Absolutely. There was a presentation I did in May, not too long ago. And it was how to successfully navigate hostile environments using the F word. And it's just to get there. What? He's going to drop the F bomb? It's not the F word that you're thinking. But it goes into that lane. When we navigate a conversation, they will tell you their preferred communication style. Like this self-declared mayor of Mostar, I decided that whenever in doubt, you should go with the friendly approach, which is more reserved and people-oriented type of language. But if it's not connecting, you have to be able to switch. So the persona that tends to be a little bit more direct, they prefer that you would communicate in a firm manner. But the persona that's more inspiring, well, they would prefer for you to communicate in a fun manner. And the persona that's more supportive in the day-to-day activities, they would prefer for you to communicate in a friendly manner. And the persona that tends to be a little bit more cautious in their day-to-day, they would prefer for you to communicate in a factual manner when connecting with people matters. So the 4 F's in regards to firm, fun, friendly, and factual. So when you're discerning one's preferred communication style, are you able then to say the same thing in a different way?
Yeah.
So with this character, the self-declared mayor of Mostar, because he was going through an interpreter, at one point he put his hand up because I was on the friendly. I was in my first meeting. I wanted to be friendly. He puts his hand up, he comes closer to the desk, points at me, and says, "I know who you are, and I know what you do." So you have a cover story, and then you go deeper in the cover story. He stops again. And the second time he mentions, "I know who you are, and I know what you do." And I'm like, okay, then let's go down to business. Then I went from friendly to firm.
Oh, yeah.
And then we connected there because that was his preferred communication style. Stop with the blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah.
And just go down bottom line. So it's very valuable of having these questions to ask. Have you ever been in this position where somebody asks you, "So what do you think? 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 What do you think we should do? What do you think? What do you think?" And you just can't connect with that word. So I was in a meeting in Atlanta, Georgia, and the president of the company, man, he's inspiring, influencing, inducing. He's like all people. And he was talking to the training director. And at the meeting goes, Guy, so what do you feel? What do you feel we should do? What do you feel? 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 And Guy is an engineer. He is like, my gosh, he's a recovering engineer. And I was looking at him and his eyes were like turning in the back of his head. And I could see him, he was becoming frustrated. And then he stood up and I'm like, fight. All right. As in, this is going to be good. And he goes, "I don't know what I feel. I don't know. I can't define how I feel. I can tell you what I think about, but I can't tell you how I feel about." And I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. See, how many times do we communicate based on how we are wired and we don't know where people are coming? Mm-hmm. A better question to ask is, so what do you feel or think we should do?
That's a more inclusive approach. Absolutely.
Zip it up.
You've just enveloped in all four, right? And folks, for those listeners who have listened to other episodes, you know that I am a very proud licensed partner of Everything Disc. And what we're talking about here, these four behaviors are disc rooted, absolutely. And we have shared some very specific examples in previous shows and intend to continue sharing on just how to use tools like disc. The important thing is not which tool you use, it's to spend some time using some tool to help you better understand the preferences, tendencies, and needs of each of those styles, right? And it's so funny when you were saying your mayor, self-declared mayor, how he was like, I know who you are. Like it's that D style that's saying less is more. I don't need your scenic route. Like I just need you to get to the point. And when I give disc workshops, sometimes where there's an activity we do a day in the life of, where we want to help kind of other people understand their style. So that's the one activity where I get all the same styles together because they've already done it, right? And then they have to draw, and I make them actually make a poster of, give us an insight on a day in the life of your style. Help others understand how to work better with you. How do you prefer to receive interactions, details, stuff? Feel free to use pictures, feel free to use words. Well, I tell you, every style shines through every single time. My dominant styles, my D styles, they will use pictures because why use 5 words when they can use 1 picture and be much more efficient with it and just get to the point, right? Which I always love to see. My I styles, I've had one group once leave it blank and I was like, guys, do you understand we have 5 minutes left? Not mean to be that person, but they're like, oh, we're good. We're just going to wing it. They don't really need that. They were just going to wing it and just going to, and then you've got our S styles who are very relationship nurturer oriented. And so they always present as a group. It's like everybody has to have their chance to have their say, and it's a collective approach to presentation. And then my C styles, I always giggle at one of my groups not too long ago, where they came to me and they were like, we ran out of paper. And in their mind, they couldn't fathom how I had not spent enough time thinking about the fact that they could run out of paper and have a plan for that. And it's always the most organized, beautiful, logically written presentation every single time. So this is not, woo-woo. This is really, truly how human behavior is wired. And it is not rocket science, but to spend a bit of time understanding that will make your communication that much more effective and that much more impactful. And that's not even getting into how it'll reduce your conflict, because people are finally going to be speaking each other's style or meeting the other person where they're at. You're right. We project what we seek, but that's not the most effective way to manage a team that has a blend of all 4 styles.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're preaching it. You will often find yourself at a disadvantage in business or in your personal life if you do not have or do not utilize a model to better understand people. Out of the 100 models that exist, the NEO, the MMPI, Strength Finder, Bank Code, Enneagrams, the Bird model, Animal model, there's so many models out there. Find one. Find one and master it. Now, I've chosen mine, as in it's the 4 temperament model of human behavior. In psychology, it's known as the wellness model. For me, it's a force multiplier. So anyone in a management or in a leadership role, if you do not use a model, you will often find yourself at a disadvantage in business or in your personal life, because people don't do things to you. They do things for themselves. Mm-hmm. And when you recognize that, and oh my gosh, you can start celebrating their differences versus tolerating their differences. And in the workplace, when it's a toxic environment, when I'm called in with that toxic environment, the first thing that we do is we implement a common language, a language that we can celebrate people's differences versus tolerate. So bringing inclusiveness, bringing an environment of trust, bringing an environment of respect, understanding that people don't do things to you. They do things for themselves. And when you understand that, one is looking for better results, more recognition, authentically building relationships, or they want to understand the reason why we do the things we do. Even their mindset. In your office, you're going to have your staff meeting. Your staff, there's people in there are asking themselves, what is this all about? Another is asking, who's going to be there? Who am I going to see? Who's going to see me? Who else is doing this? And one is like, how can we work together, and how can we do this, and how are we going to be able to implement this? And of course, there's one is always asking why are we having this meeting?
Why are we even having this meeting? I was going to say.
So every persona has a different mindset. But if you knew that, you can remove an objection before the objection. You're probably asking yourself why we're here and what this meeting is all about. Who else has done this before, and how we're going to be able to implement this moving forward. Oh my gosh, it's like, are you how did you know that?
Yeah.
That's removing an objection before an objection. That's why it is valuable to have this. So anyone in a management or a leadership role, I heard it said this way: a leader is not one who looks behind to see who's following them. A leader is one who knows who they are following as they move ahead. And I'm like, yeah, we all need a coach. We all need a mentor. We all need to find the role model for us to move forward. And I've discerned, because at one point in the military, they will refer to as the Big Five is a model that they will use, or the Alpha and the Omega. And it's like, you know what? No, it's like one time somebody said, only that D persona are the leaders. And I'm like, you got it wrong. It's not that, it's just that we lead differently. So then I put this program in place, and it's the 4 different leadership style, as in a leader is not one who looks behind to see who's following them. A leader is one who recognizes the environment that they're in and adapts his or leadership style towards that environment. Because that D persona likes to lead from the front. Perfect. But the I persona likes to lead from the center of the mass. High energy, high touch, influencing them to that desired outcome. The high S, they like to lead from the back, making sure nobody's left behind.
Nobody's left behind. Absolutely.
Right? And then they encourage people to move forward to the finish line. And of course, the C, they lead from the side. They can see the back, they can see the middle, they can see the front, but they make sure that everyone's in the right place at the right time on the right procedures. So a leader is not one who looks behind again, but a leader is one who recognizes the environment and adapts his or her leadership style towards that environment. And some environments we're very comfortable with. Others we struggle. Well, and that's where the key of our success is found. Your strengths will carry you. Your lowest traits should concern you. Not to become them, but to be able to go and visit those areas by design and not by chance.
Absolutely. And to recognize those lowest, like you referred to them as lowest traits. I call them blind spots that are impacting your every interaction. And the only way you can become a better driver, for example, is to understand and be aware of those blind spots so that you can mitigate accordingly. Same thing with your persona. And as a leader, it's imperative that you understand what are some of your blind spots so that you can adjust accordingly. I think we could continue talking, and I end most of my episodes, I would say, we can continue talking for hours. But if we had to, and you've given us so much gold, I don't think I've taken this many notes of just one line things you say that are so powerful. Your common link, your common like, your common love, removing objection before it even appears by speaking to, prefacing and packaging your message in a way that speaks and addresses some of the fears that are likely at play in the moment, to optimize the uptake, to optimize the buy-in. I think that is just so powerful. But if you had to leave our audience, JJ, with one nugget of wisdom, one strategy, or just a tip that you would like them to take with them moving forward, what would that be?
Get good at asking questions. If you go to the retiredspy.com, you scroll all the way down, you'll find the 10 most effective feel-good ice-breaking questions. When connecting with people matters. If that's something that matters, then you can actually go there and get a copy of this. If your audience, your listeners would like to connect, you can book a complimentary 30-minute call with me. You just look at my calendar, and happy to connect. A lot of the students that come from the different departments of across Canada, I offer a complimentary 60, 90-minute masterclass on making sense of the people puzzle in times of change. So it's all about giving back, giving back, giving back. If there's a QR code that I have, I can share but this is on a Zoom call, so I'm not too sure in regards.
Well, we're actually going to be sharing it. It's going to be on all the podcasts. And if you do have a QR code, we can leave it in the notes as well. And it's going to appear. We do a video version on YouTube and then the audio version over all the other airwaves. But we are going to have notes and we are going to amplify over our network. So absolutely anything you want to share with us, we will make sure to pass on to our listeners. It's extremely generous of you to offer.
Do you want me to put this on the screen or just send you the?
Just send it to me in a separate email. We'll make sure to capture it. But definitely, I loved your parting tip of, learn to ask great questions and to come at everything, I guess, from a curious perspective, to want to listen, to understand, and not to respond. Thank you so much for joining us, JJ. This was such a great episode. And thank you, listeners, for listening in. We shall see each other again. Redoing that one. We shall, no, what do I have to say here? I'm just going to go. That's it. Okay. Julie, phrase. Effacez tout ça. Je recommence la fin. Thank you, JJ, for listening. Thank you, JJ, for joining us. And thank you, listeners, for listening in. And I hope that you are able to take some of this great insight and use it in your day-to-day life. J'ai un outro anyways qui, mais je sais jamais comment le finir. Je suis toujours comme, je viens toujours weird à la fin. Des fois, je suis juste comme, thank you for listening. C'est ça, faudrait juste que je fasse, mais en tout cas.
On va avoir le tagline. Fait, moi, je vais souvent dire, remember, keep calm and discalm. Parce que c'est un petit tagline.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us for yet another enriching conversation. To hear more about today's guests, make sure to check out the links in the description of this episode. Want to continue the conversation? Then head on over to our social media platforms, all of which are also linked in the description, to keep it going. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss another valuable episode.